are talking about the goal and how to reach the Supreme Abode. So then the goal should be sought after, where having gone, none returns again. So remember, there are two processes which are taking place here. Number one is to cut down the strong tree with the strong acts of non-attachment. That's the first part. Then having done that, what Bhagavan is saying, then the goal should be sought after. And once you reach that goal, there is no return. It's a one-way flight. It's a one-way ticket. Once you get there, there is no coming back. And in this sense, it means that once the realization has taken place and you have realized the truth about yourself, then there is no descent back into ignorance, because it is the truth which is realized. And once it is realized, one becomes established in that, and that establishment is complete and eternal, and therefore there is no coming back. And of course, it means not coming back in two different ways. One is that once you get into the knowledge of the self, there is no knowledge of the ego, which is going to drag us back again. And the second meaning is that once we achieve that state of realization, then there is no coming back in terms of another birth. So I seek refuge in that primal Purusha, from which stream forth from time immemorial all activity or energy. So the goal is that Supreme Purusha, from which has come all this activity and creation from time immemorial, which means that it has no beginning, no end. So let's look at verse number 5 in this one, which then tells us the relationship between these strong acts of non-attachment and the actual practices which are required. So we can just talk about here, non-attachment, but how does it then relate to what we have to actually do in terms of our sadhana? So here's the strong acts of non-attachment. So the first thing Bhagavan says, free yourself from pride and delusion. Freedom from pride and delusion means what? I am deluded that I am this ego, and I have this pride that I am this person existing in the world, and I should be recognized as this ego identity. All that is gone. The delusion that I am this ego is gone, and the pride which I have in my ego identity, that is gone as well. Secondly, victorious over evil of attachment. Complete victory. And why do we call it the evil of attachment? Because that is what is binding me here. That is what is giving me suffering. Arjuna is actually suffering simply because of this attachment to his kith and kin. And he needs to become victorious over the evil of attachment. So do we, if we want to then release ourselves from the cycle of birth and death. So that is the second part. The third part, desires have completely retired. Completely retired. There's no kind of part-time retirement or you're doing part-time job. No, completely retired. In other words, there's no desire. Desire has been transcended also. Why? Because the vasanas themselves have completely burnt out. In the fire of knowledge, all the desires get burnt out, vasanas get burnt out, completely retired. That is what we have to work towards. And freed from the pairs of opposites. And the pairs of opposites only arise, why? Because there is duality. I'm the subject and here's the object. And in that subject-object duality, there is the like and there is the dislike. And this like and dislike is also related to various different pairs of opposites, like heat and cold. So at this moment, we have a bit of heat, and I like that. If it becomes cold in the winter, I don't like that. So like and dislike, pairs of opposite, freed from their why? Because we have transcended duality. So having done that, strong acts of non-attachment through these practices, we then come to what? We have to go to that goal. Remember the last verse? We have to go to the goal and dwell constantly in the self. So in this one verse, Bhagavan is telling us the process, the sadhana, what we have to do in order to escape from this cycle of birth and death. And Bhagavan says the undiluted, the delusion has gone. They reach the goal eternal. And the goal eternal is what? Uttam Purusha, Puruṣottama. So this Paramatma, which we talked about in chapter 13, is what Bhagavan is referring to here as Puruṣottama. It is the eternal Brahman, and that is the goal eternal. So you can see Bhagavan has kind of systematically told us what to do, how this non-attachment is going to come about, and how once that has come about, we kind of move towards dwelling constantly in the self. And when that delusion is completely gone, and the pride is gone, attachments have gone, desires have gone, and the influence of the pairs of opposites have gone, we reach that eternal goal. So remember that we have talked about this before, expression in the Jiva of Brahman. So the goal and how to reach the Supreme Abode. So Bhagavan says, nor does the sun shine there, nor the moon, nor the fire, to which have gone, having gone, they return not. This is my Supreme Abode. So Bhagavan kind of describes it in a different manner here. He says, my Supreme Abode is where there is no sunshine, there's no moon, there's no fire. In other words, it doesn't mean it's a place of complete darkness. We have to understand what he means by this. And of course, we saw this in chapter number 2 as well, where Bhagavan says, that which is night to all beings, in that the self-controlled man keeps awake. The Gnani, he keeps awake. Where all beings are awake, that is night to the Muni, the sage. In other words, he lives in a different um, consciousness altogether. And this is what we are going to think about in this in relationship to this verse. So sunlight, moonlight, firelight, what do? They illumine the objects of our perception. If you want to see something, you need some light. And that light is going to come from sunlight, moonlight, firelight. And specifically, sunlight is, the origin of all light. And then it kind of reflects on the moon and we get moonlight. Firelight is something which is then created within creation in this kind of way. And it allows us to see things. It illumines, as it were, the objects of our perception. So illumination in terms of Vedanta is equal to awareness through the mind and intellect. In other words, if I say my mind and intellect has been illuminated, it means within that illumination, I am aware of the thoughts and the feelings which are going on in my mind and intellect. So illumination is not this kind of physical illumination, but it is equated to awareness in our individual experience. And the Supreme Abode cannot be reached by that awareness. Why can't it be reached? Because the Supreme is not an object of awareness. And therefore he says, the sun cannot shine there, the moon cannot shine there, the firelight, there is no fire there. Why? What he means is that through my intellect alone, through language, through words, I cannot reach the truth. The language and the words can only point towards the truth, but it cannot be reached by this conditioned awareness in which I'm located. Okay, so what he says, there is no awareness there. It is pure consciousness. It is not conditioned awareness, but it is pure consciousness. And therefore, in order to reach that pure consciousness, I have to go beyond the identification with the body and the mind and the intellect. And remember, The Supreme Abode is not an object of our awareness. I can't say, I have seen Brahman, I have seen Atma. You can't say that because it is not an object of awareness. In order to know Atma, you have to become Atma. It is knowledge through identity rather than knowledge through perception. Two very different ideas. Okay. And here what Bhagwan is saying, that you have to know the Supreme Abode not by thinking about it, but by being Brahman. Only then you can say that you have reached the Supreme Abode. And that is the ultimate subjective reality, not the objective reality, but the subjective reality, which I say,
Daddy,
which I
Raja.
say is the supreme consciousness. Um, Kishore Bhai. So this cannot be illumined as an object, just like I was saying, but illumines the entire creation. It illumines how? It illumines because through my mind and intellect, I can see the totality of creation. It is as if the supreme consciousness is illumining the totality of creation, and it is perceivable by me through my senses. Once the self is realized, there is no more delusion. In other words, I have come out of the delusion that I am this body, mind, intellect, I am this ego identity. And once that happens, you have crossed the threshold. Once you have crossed the threshold, there is no coming back. Okay. So it is one way and there is no return. So realization in that sense, but also escape from or liberation from the cycle of birth and death.